So we've been living with Daphi for a week and a bit now, and obviously we've had some weekends away and done a little bit of sailing. So I thought I'd give you my first thoughts on what a Jeanneau 34.2 shallow keel cruising yacht is like. Well, firstly, and this won't come as any surprise to anyone except me, it's a cruising boat, and therefore you have to readjust your expectations to suit a cruising boat. In comparison to a good sailing boat, it doesn't sail particularly well. You can just about get to 40 degrees to the wind in flat water, and if you've got no real tide hurting you. As soon as basically as soon as the boat speed slows up for any reason, you start losing grip on the keel, because it's only a small keel, it just goes sideways, and then you just can't go upwind. I mean, you go upwind because it's a cruising boat. It'll sail upwind like a cruising boat, but it won't sail upwind like a good sailing boat. But because it's a cruising boat, when the wind's on the nose, you put the engine on and you just motor. You don't do any of this sailing upwind stuff. And the motor's brilliant. It punches along quite happily at sort of 6.5 knots. It'll go faster if you throttle it, but and it's got quite a nice motion. It's got a lot of kind of, not quite sure the top right term, but like form stability. It hasn't got much kind of roll stability when you're in a seaway and the waves are behind you or whatever, and it starts to go. There's not much keel there to damp it out, so it does swing around a lot. But when you're just motoring, or you're just like I am now at anchor, it's very stable boat. You climb on the side, it barely moves, which is all good from a cruising point of view. In terms of its sailing, as you people that have watched the first one, you'll realise there's lots of things I didn't like about it. One of which is, like, I don't like masthead rigs. You don't have control of the mast as such, and basically you have a lot of stays. The mast is held rigid and you just trim the sails accordingly. As a dinghy sailor, and as someone who's raced boats, if you like, with controllable masts, I'm used to the fact that being able to bend the mast is a really good thing to do. So I miss that. It also means when you have a masthead rig, you generally anyway have a large overlapping genoa, which Daphi has, and again, which are horrible things. The real pain to tack. It's awful. As soon as you start easing it out, it all just loses shape, and because the sail's so big, you really need to get the sail controls, if you like, further outboard to control the tension in the leech. You lose all that. But a couple of things we did to improve that, which if you've got a large overlapping genoa and they're a real pain to tack, the two things we did is we put a large, long, continuous jib sheet on, and then use that kind of, not a knot, just a hitch, where you thread the middle of the rope. You make an eye in the middle of the rope, thread it through the sail, then thread the tails through the loop and pull it. You wouldn't think that would be grip strong enough for a genoa sheet, but it does. And it means there's no knot, no join or anything at the sail, so it runs around the shrouds a lot cleaner. And then the other thing we did was, I suppose one of the perks of a masthead rig, there's lots of rigging, so you can take each shroud off in turn without really affecting the, without any risk of the mast falling down. So I marked with a bit of tape where each turnbuckle was set on each of the shrouds, slackened it off on the four that are a problem, and then slid a bit of I don't know what it is, what size it is, because I'm not a plumber, but it's a sort of overflow plastic tube you get in the plumbers merchants. Slid some lengths of that over the shrouds, and then did them back up again to my tape mark. So the rigging's exactly as it was before. Whether that's right or not, I don't know, but the boat, the mast hasn't fallen down and it sails okay. But the tube now, allowing it to spin and allowing the ropes to move around it, combined with the long single sheet genoa sheet, has made tacking a lot easier. It would be nice, because we do need new sails. The sails are shot. We do need new sails, and it'd be nice to get a smaller cut genoa made, because I don't really need all that. Except on Daphi, because they're trying to keep the decks clear and everything, the jib leads are on top of the coach roof. And if I got a shorter footed genoa made, so it's less overlap or whatever, I would never get the ropes around the shrouds nicely to get a nice sheeting angle. So obviously I could put more deck hardware on it, but to be honest, it's a cruising boat. I don't need to be tuning it or anything. So we'll stick to what we've got. When I get sails made, I'll just get a standard Genoa made. It's okay. When you roll it in to refit as such, it's a horrible shape again. But as we've already said, if you're going upwind when shape really matters the most, you put the engine on. So it's fine for what the boat is. Next thing, and one I didn't appreciate fully when I did that film about lazy jacks and stack packs. Do you really need it? I stand by what I said for the type of boat I was talking about. However, this is a cruising boat, and because cruising sailors don't want to bump their head, the boom's very high, which makes it comfortable when you're sitting around and however. But with the boom high, it means the sail's high when you want to put it away. And I don't think I'd appreciated how much the stack pack system, which I still don't particularly like, it's still a real pain. Putting the sail up and trying to keep the battens out of the lazy jacks as it goes up is a real nuisance. But if it was windy and rolly and you wanted to drop the sail, on a boom you can hardly reach, because Hannah and I are normal sized people, we're not very tall. So it really does help. So I wouldn't say I'm a convert, but I can certainly appreciate the benefit to a stack pack and lazy jack system. Next thing I commented on was the fact that we're only 2 winches, which was a stupid idea. Who puts a sailing boat with 2 winches? And again, I think if you had a standard 34.2 where the mainsail was on the coach roof as well, you would struggle, to be frank, with 2 winches. It's hard work. But because ours has this traveller conversion, which frees up the winches from the main sheets. Now all the winches have to do the jibs, the 2 Jeanneau sheets, and then all the sail controls. The locks on the fair leads, turning blocks or fair leads or whatever they're on the jib, the locking pull works really well, and it's just good enough to mean that you can lock the Jeanneau off, use the winch for something else, and then go back to the Jeanneau. An old Second World War plane of some description, or what looks like. Might not be Second World War, but it's something like that. Anyway, it's old. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Yeah, you can just about cope. So I've yet to fly the spinnaker in anger, but again, because I'll just fold the Jeanneau up when I do it, drop the sheets on the deck, and then use it on the spinnaker, I think I'll get away with 2 winches, and that's good because there really isn't anywhere to put them. Some people place them effectively alongside the current winches, in a place on the one free place on the top of the coach roof. But when you've got the spray hood up, Dodger on the front, they get in the way, or that'll get in the way of the winches. So I'm not so keen on that, and there's nowhere on the side decks convenient to put them because of the lockers and because of the shapes of the decks. So 2 winches it is, but as it happens, 2 winches are just about enough. Next thing I commented on, which I didn't like, was the wheel. And although that wheel is a really good wheel and it works really well, the rudder's a very well balanced rudder, so there's not that much load on it, and it works okay, except I stand by what I say. Wheels on boats this size are stupid. You can't do anything. You either have to be stood behind the wheel sailing, really, because there's a wheel there and people are used to it, people put their instruments there. So if I want to know what the depth is, I've got to be behind the wheel. So when you come to sail with a boat, it makes it a real pain, because you have to, you can sort of sit on the side and play the main sheet, but you can't sensibly reach the jib sheets. So when you're on your own and tacking, basically what you do is you uncleat the jib, you steer through the tack, let the jib flap, get out the other side, lock the wheel off or put the alter helm or whatever, and then you have to pull the jib in, which of course, because it's a large overlapping Genoa, has got a lot of rope on it. It's a real pain. So this boat, and any boat of this sort of size, would be so much better with a tiller. The only complication with a tiller is I think the thing that put people off with a tiller is that we're used to having auto helms nowadays, and people think an auto helm for a tiller is one of those tiller pilot sticks that you just clip on and off, which work fine, but on a bigger boat aren't really up to it. Except you can get proper hydraulic or below deck or whatever clutched systems for tillers like we had on Seahorse, which mean that it's no problem at all. And then you can move the tiller out of the way and you get the whole cockpit free to stand in, do whatever in, sail the boat in. Would be so much better, but converting it would be a nightmare. And of course, for whatever reason, the general public seem to think you want wheels on boats, so I suspect if I put a tiller on, as much as I'd like it, I'd be devaluing the boat. So I'll put up with a wheel. Again though, of course, because it's a cruising boat, the reason we bought it is to go away with friends and stuff. So if I've got friends, you know, anyone can steer the boat, they can steer that, and I can sit here and trim sails and be happy. Other than that, the boat as a whole works really well. It's a good size. I mean, it's a what you might call a small big boat, you know, with all the cabins down below and all the amenities and stuff. It's got everything a big boat would have, but in a 34-foot size. It's a comparatively short mast for the size of boat, which makes it a bit more manageable. I suspect that's because the keel obviously isn't so big, so there's not quite as much righting moment when you're loaded up, but it works fine. We put the davits on the back, as you've probably seen, again because there's a lot of, you know, we live in a muddy tidal river. Being able to get ashore when you've got a dog and a small child is really useful, especially when you're cruising, you want to spend time at anchor. So the davits make the whole dinghy thing much more convenient, and it's already, you know, been worth the time and money to do. It just makes it much easier. And of course this boat's got a, you know, sugar scoop type transom on the back, and the seat on the helm folds out the way to make a nice convenient step down, so it's all really easy to get on and off. It's really good. Anyway, let's move downstairs and I'll have a quick talk about downstairs, because then I'm going sailing, because it's a lovely day. So downstairs then, next thing is terminology. In Seahorse we had some companionway steps that led down into the main saloon. We had a V-berth up front, which was next to the heads. The galley was at the back near the companionway entrance, and then there was a quarter berth. Fairly traditional kind of boat of its size. We have already slipped into terminology on this boat of, you walk down the stairs into the lounge where we have a settee, then there's a dining room table next to the kitchen, and then we have two bedrooms, one at the front and one at the back, and then the third bedroom really is a garage, because that's where we keep the bicycles and the tools and all those odds and ends that every house has. Oh, and of course there's a toilet with a shower. Yeah. You don't think of it as a boat in the same way when you're used to the sort of boats we've had. It's very comfortable. Again, it's not a small boat, a 34 foot, but it's not huge. But to have 3 sleeping cabins, a separate saloon, the linear galley like this, kitchen, it's a very comfortable space to be, and you kind of get everything that big boats have in a small package. So as a space to live in, it works really well. And of course one of the beauties of it being, you know, a small big boat, so to speak, the handholds and that, when you're at sea, it's actually still not a bad place to move around. There are plenty of handholds and things to grab onto when you're moving around down here in a seaway, so it's quite safe. There's lots of light. There's 2 big hatches in the roof, there's port lights in the sides, plus the windows around the top. A lot of these open up, so where we've had this really hot weather recently, we can open all these things up and get a nice blow through. It's been really good. And that's kind of it. All in all, as a sailing boat, it's not as disappointing as I thought it would be. And certainly, like we had a rough old passage up to the Deben, a few weeks ago, and much rougher, and it needed to be. Don't know why it was, really, to be honest. It was meant to be kind of 10 to 15. But once we get, and it turned out to be 20 to 25 and a really horrible siege state, and then the entrance, and everyone got a bit fraught. But as soon as we got to the Deben, it dropped to kind of 5 to 10, and we just unfurled the jib, and sailed up the Deben with the tide, and it was lovely. And the boat, for that, you know, for the sailing at sea in the tide, it struggled. It couldn't do it. It was proper upwind in this horrible chop in a good blow. We had 2 reefs in, and it didn't. And the boat didn't like it. It wouldn't go, to the point where Hannah and Elizabeth and Winnie the dog weren't enjoying it. So we dropped the sails and motored. But as soon as we got into the river, we just unfurled the jib, coasted along the tide. Really pleasant sail. And to be honest, in that type of sailing, it sails as well as anything, because there was no hurry. It didn't have to go upwind particularly well. You know, there was a couple of points on the river where we were tacking upwind with just a jib, and it would go along, although we did have the tide helping us. But always in the knowledge that we just push one button, the engine comes on. Even in tick over, it was just enough to keep the keel working, and then we could sail up, and it was lovely. So as a sailing boat, it's flawed, but it's not. It does sail. And for the sort of boat it is, it's good. Anyway, I'm waffling now, and the sun's gone in, which is a pain because I want to go sailing. So I'm going to put these cameras away. Well, I'll leave the camera on the back on or whatever, and I'm going to have a quick sail. So anyway, if I don't say this again, I'm Ian. This is Sailing with the Foxwell family. Thanks for watching, and I will get up to something again next week. Thank you.